Matt Roberts with D1 Ticker and Coaches.wire from the NFCA Convention here in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm joined by Boise State head coach Justin Shults. A lot of momentum in Boise, a lot of momentum around the sport. It's a lot of the dialogue here at the convention, but what's your perception on how the sport continues to grow, both in maybe like just common sport fan understanding, also in core audience as well?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I mean, you look in the last probably decade or so, it's just absolutely skyrocketed. Our sport is on the rise, and it continues to grow year in and year out. The NCAA and Oklahoma City have answered the call in terms of adding more seating for the fans, and the fans have returned that by showing up and selling out. And so it's been really, really powerful to see how fast our sport's growing. And can we keep it sustainable is the next thing.
How do we keep it sustainable? You walked yourself right into it.
Right. And I think the biggest thing is continuing to put a good product out there. I think, and obviously I'm a little biased in terms of where I'm at, but I do think parity in sport is huge. And so I think in order to continue to grow the sport, allowing that parity to happen and authentically figuring out ways to get the best teams in the tournament every year to compete and to show how broad the product is or how many good teams are out there and not just centralize on a few.
Yeah, we're going to talk about macro, what's going on in the industry, how it applies to softball, but micro, the ways to keep that parity include what? Roster management issues, transfer portal issues. How do you see maybe the top ways to maintain parity?
Yeah, I think obviously the transfer portal is the biggest one right now. You look at the teams, the rich get richer, and that's just life. I think that's no matter what industry you're in, the rich are getting richer. And so for us, it's how do we create at our school at Boise State, how do we create an environment that the athletes want to stay regardless of what's happening? I think looking at our football team, they've done an awesome job of answering the call and finding ways to keep a lot of their athletes around. Softball should be no different, as we have a great product, we have a great city to live in. And so for us, yes, people are going to call, they're going to try to figure out ways to get our athletes to leave when they're good enough. Our job is to figure out a way to keep them, and if we can keep our athletes, that creates parity by just keeping the best athletes for 4 years.
So let's dig in on both sides of your comment. The side of, I have some student athletes who are going to get approached potentially by Power 5 programs, Power 4 programs, whatever the nomenclature is at this point in time. How do I retain them? Is NIL a piece of that now for you guys? What's the strategy on retention of talent?
Yeah, and every coach is different. My philosophy is NIL is going to be a little bit of a part of the game, but it's not really the focal point. When we go through the recruiting process, we're talking about our core values. I mean, it's in our mantra. We're blue collar at Boise State, and so I want athletes who have a chip on their shoulder. They understand that, yes, there could be NIL opportunities because of the product we're creating, but that's not the focal point. The focal point is coming in with that chip on your shoulder. You got overlooked by, like you said, the Power 4, Power 5, maybe Power 2, who knows, is do you have a chip on your shoulder and do you want to be a part of something that's different? Because right now it's easy to hit the portal, go join a super team and play. For us, my job is to create the narrative of the opposite, be different, find a way to compete, and let's go shock people, kind of like James Madison did a few years ago in the softball world. It was really cool to watch.
But there are some NIL opportunities for your kids right
now.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think it just depends on, like, we've done a good job with certain collectives and things like that, and there's been interview opportunities for our athletes, and so there are pieces, and our admin does an awesome job of staying with it. That's going to be in the background for us, though. As a softball team, we want to focus on each other and being a team. And when you start talking NIL a little bit, does it start to create division within the team? Certain kids are getting more than others, and so for me, it's created challenges, but it's fun challenges. You got to adapt.
So the other side of this coin is, you're at Boise, and there's mid to low majors or D2, D3 NAIA kids who you also may be able to recruit to your program if they enter the portal. So how would you respond to your peers who would say, man, it's easy to sit up there and you're a notable low high major, high mid major, however we want to term it, and say, yeah, we need to keep kids, they might go, but you have to play the portal some for an actual recruitment piece as well.
Yeah, I think the portal works both ways. I think obviously there's good and bad about the portal. Yes, there are people getting approached probably unethically. But I think at the same time is I've been able to build a culture and to create a product that we're proud of. And part of it's the people who didn't buy into that blue collar way. Like, it was faster for us to allow them to go find a new home. So I think the portal's good. I think
what it calls bounce backs, or
allowing them to go find a new home and do that, and then we bring other people in who have bought into what our philosophies are. And so I think you're always like I said, the rich are going to get richer, but for us, it's how do you find the right recruits, whether it's portal or high school kids, and then your job is to keep them. I think that's as a mid-major or whatever we want to call ourselves, like our job is to create an environment that they want to stay regardless of the other things out there in the world.
Every person who's going to sit in this seat today is going to say it's all about finding the right recruits.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the ingredients here to find the right prospective student athletes?
Yeah, I mean, got to be a good softball player. Number one. Number two is they got to be a good person. I think we talk about that. We've got 3 rules.
And you're measuring the good person piece. How are we measuring that? Feedback from high school coaches, travel coaches, good parents.
We watch them. Stalking may be a weird word to say, but recruiting wise, like we have a 2024 class. I've seen all of those kids pitch 100 innings, have 100 at-bats, and we just sit back and watch. Over the course of time, they'll show their true colors. Do they have a bad day? Are they throwing things? Are they treating their parents poorly? Like we watch all that stuff. So by the time we bring them to campus, we're no longer evaluating the player, we're evaluating the parents. And so that's the third piece is, do they have a good family? Because in today's athletics, families are just as important. ADs are more interested now at times of hearing maybe a complaint from a parent, where 10, 15 years ago that really wasn't a thing. And so we really focus on evaluating our players for a longer period of time. And that's why I like high school athletes, because you get to see that for a while. Most of the transfers that we've gotten, I've had a pre-existing relationship with them, either recruiting them out of high school, knowing them through playing them, things like that. And so we had already seen that piece as well. It's not like we're just pulling out of a blind hat in the portal. I really don't like doing that.
So seeing them 100 innings, 100 at-bats, even though recruiting windows have changed over the last couple of years about when you can start talking to them, even if they're not on campus and they're a freshman in high school, we're going to sit and we're going to watch. And it may not even be about those 4 at-bats you had in the game. It's about how you interact with your teammates, how you're in and out the dugout, things like that. Sort of intangible items. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, we're after a couple weeks, we already know they're good enough for softball. Yeah. The rest is just now monitoring how they are over the course of the year, because for us, we get them for 4 years. If you just had a good weekend, and then the other 51 weeks you're not a great person, that's gonna be wearing on us. So we really focus on that piece a lot. And then we do word of mouth as well. Coaches talk about it, but usually coaches promote them positively.
At a place like Boise, given its notoriety because of football for the last 2 decades, what's your immediate sentiment to stuff this specific week when Charlie Baker releases a memo about how really the industry needs to change in some ways? Do you feel confident because we're part of a brand that is nationally recognized, we've got a lot of momentum at our back, again, as a brand, not just one individual program, or do you go, boy, this is not good for us, how's this going to look, where do we go from here?
Yeah, I'm confident in our leadership more than the brand, and the brand's great as well. But what Jeremiah's been doing, what our leadership's been doing there, I think they're going to keep us in those conversations. So yes, I think it's going to be a challenge because we're not as big of a market as maybe some of the other schools in the South or whatever. But I do think there's possibilities for us to continue to stay in the realm, because in all reality, how many teams end up going with this model, I think that's for question, but I think we'll be in a good spot to have a chance to do that.
Coming back to what happened here this morning, a big rules session, let's put you on the spot on one thing. We're talking about the product on the field. Rule changes on field that you really love, or you're sort of like holding out like verdict on how you feel with some of the pitch clock, those types of items.
Yeah, I love the pitch clock. I think our game was getting into a place, especially with the offenses increasing. I think that's something that needed to be done to continue. One thing coming from the baseball side to softball is I love the tempo of softball. There's a pitch, there's a play that's constant action. And I think we're getting to a place where there's too much gamesmanship going on, where you could kind of stall a little bit. So I really like that. The other ones, I don't mind the minimal release of the ground, like pitchers being able to not crow hop but disengage, because I just want rules to where it's not being put into the umpire's hands of space, we're talking about this much. I just want the athletes to play, and I think that's what creates this product. The less the umpires can be involved, the more the focus is on the athletes, and that's our biggest thing.
And with the growth of the sport, especially I'm thinking ESPN, this tight window of a 2-hour programming block, and you can finish a game in that amount of time. Yeah. That's a benefit.
Oh,
for
sure.
That's not I think maybe there's some challenges associated with getting used to new rules, but we have to call a spade a spade. TV and media play a huge part in promoting all sports across the NCAA landscape, and with it comes rule changes at times.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's a double-edged sword, as we need to be on TV. With that, TV gets a lot of the power as well, and what followings are going to create the most profitability for the sport as well. And so rules are important with that being said, but I think at the end of the day too, it's like, how do we continue to tell our story for Boise to be relevant? Because when TV starts to dictate certain game slots and things like that, we have to have a big enough brand and a big enough story for them to be like, we're going to still choose them to represent that.
How do you approach, let's end here, how do you approach the story that's been told about Boise, mainly football, of course, for quite some time now, and use that to your benefit in recruiting, but also how do you tell the unique softball story of Boise?
Yeah, I think football speaks for itself. It's a national brand. The blue turf, it's like Smurf turf, whatever you want to call it. Like, there's so many names for it. I'm from Southern California, and I used to love watching Boise games because it was different. They were really good. You got to watch Kellen Moore throw the ball around. Like, they were creative, hook and ladders and Statues of Liberties, all these. So you're like, oh, this is innovative, and it's the Cinderella story that you're kind of rooting for in sports. Now they've become more of a national brand, and for us, we're only young in our softball career as a program at Boise State. So for me, it's like, how do we entice these athletes to come create that brand on the softball side now? Like, it's their story to tell.
But even now, you're saying to those families, like, remember when Boise football wasn't okay. So, and the parents probably get that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, most people don't know the turf wasn't always blue. Right. It was green, and before it became blue, it wasn't as big of a brand. And so I am sharing that story with them, and then also saying, like, these athletes can create their own story coming to Boise. It's easy to go and join the super teams. You see it in the NBA all the time.
But they don't always work out, by the way.
No, and they don't always work out. I mean, only one team can win the national title every year, so you never know.
Best of luck this season. We'll keep in touch, and thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.